Welcome to Wide Angle this week. Today we have with us Congress leader Kapil Sibal as the Science and Technology and Telecommunications Minister in the previous UPA government. He often found himself in the center of the UPA's defense against corruption charges. In fact, the idea of zero loss in the 2G scam and the coal scam was a term that Mr. Sibal himself coined. Today, he's with us to talk about his new book called Shades of Truth, A Journey Derailed. This essentially is looking at the last 4 years of the NDA government under Prime Minister Narendra Modi on promises that were made and perhaps not kept is essentially the theme of this book as well. But I want to take you to something you have written towards the end of the book, which is on the UPA and perceptions around the UPA, how there was a narrative that gained momentum because you say that you didn't manage the perception battle very well as far as charges of corruption are concerned, particularly. Would you have done it differently today?
No, I think it's just more than we were not able to manage the perception battle. It's much more than that. I've also hinted at the fact that there were certain forces
at play, right?
At play, they were conspiring with each other. The media was part of it. I'm sorry to say, some parts of the electronic media, and huge monies were flowing for people to come to the Ramlila ground.
You mentioned the agitations, the Anna Hazare, the Ramdev agitations.
Yeah, so they're all of them sort of. I mean, the whole Lokpal agitation. If it was genuine, we would have seen the appointment of a Lokpal and a Lok Ayukt in every state of this country. But Mr. Modi, while he was in the opposition, the BJP and others talked about the Lokpal Bill and the Jan Lokpal Bill, and we passed a bill in Parliament. Their sense of the House was taken. What happened? 4.5 years down the road, who's talking about Lokpal? Right? And now some attempt is being made after 6 meetings. After 6 meetings of the committee, where they say, okay, now we'll appoint a search committee. So all this is, so 5 years will have passed, and the agitation on the basis of which they castigated us came to naught. So one of two things: either that agitation was genuine, right? If it was, then why is Modi quiet for the last 5 years or 4.5 years? So obviously, this was like any other statement that Modi ji made. He never meant what he said. He was selling dreams. He was attacking the then government on charges which are obviously unfounded. And what has happened to corruption today? Why? And if there was a Lokpal today, we would have seen a different side of the Rafael deal, right? Because there's no Lokpal, nobody will investigate. All the agencies talk the tune of the government. And so there's no accountability. All the scams that we have pointed out, whether it's Vyapam or it's scams in Chhattisgarh, Birla Diaries, Sahara Diaries, all of that has come to naught because there's nobody to investigate, and there are no conspiring forces today as there were when we were in power.
So perhaps then the question to ask is, because these are also very serious questions that you have raised about the role of government agencies that you're talking about in the run-up to 2014 versus what they might be doing today. But let's take, out of all these that you've mentioned, let's take Rafael, for example, because it's in the news. It's something the Congress has decided to make a serious issue. When it comes to perception about the party, the Congress versus the BJP, do you think that the spotlight you all are placing on the Rafael deal and the various voices who've made comments about whether there was a deal for 36, how the Reliance group, Anil Ambani's Reliance group got into the act, whether it was decided by the government or something independent and organic, do you think it's gained traction? Do you think that the public is buying this?
Oh yes, I think so. I've been, to many states in the country talking about it. I've held press conferences. There is, and the social media is now playing a very important role, who they want to now throttle. Previously they used the social media because they had an army of pracharaks out there who were sitting and who were trolling us. Now they realize that they are being trolled. Now the language of the government is somewhat different. How do we deal with fake news? It's what they generated when they were in opposition. They're generating even today. But I think on the social media platforms, people understand that there's something really that's gone wrong in Rafael and somebody is really responsible. But I think that the electronic media, again, it has changed its tune since 2014. It's collaborating with the government, really. Many sections of the electronic media, not all. But I think that we need to do more, and we need to continue to raise the issue because the facts are so clear that people now understand that this government is hiding a lot.
So, in the writing of this book, is it fair to say that you've also spent some time introspecting about what went wrong within the Congress party and the UPA as well? Because sure, I mean, it's always very easy to point out the flaws in the opponent, but today you're in the role of the opposition. What do you think the mistakes of the UPA and the Congress were?
See, look,
or have been as well.
I've mentioned it in the book. And I've been very careful about it, and I've been objective, if you notice. While I have castigated the present Prime Minister and his role and the dreams that he sold and the lies that are being told by this government, I've also introspected on the fact that at that point in time, we just couldn't manage the perception. And the perception went around that we were actually corrupt. And there are three entities that really played a very important role in that. Number one was the CAG, right? That figure of 1,76,000 crores and 1,85,000 crores on the coal scam, and that was taken up by the opposition, right? And the opposition played on it, and then of course
they're very compelling figures to a public.
And absolutely,
right.
He didn't even talk about loss; they talked about presumptive loss, and the whole sort of the message to the people was, they forgot about any presumptions. They talked about the actual loss, right? And as if we had looted the people of this country. And then, of course, the courts. And in fact, if you really look at the problems that we are facing today, or problems the economy is facing today, it's because of that. Because in the coal sector, people who had set up power plants investing 15,000-20,000 crores overnight lost their coal allocations. So they couldn't get coal. Coal India didn't have the capacity to supply coal. And they couldn't pay the loans of the banks because they didn't have any coal to run the power plants. So if you borrow from the bank, you don't have any coal, you have to import coal, and import coal at very high prices. You can't service the debt.
Right.
And this is the result of the NPS today.
Okay.
But who bothers about that? I mean, the problem is that we individually can communicate with you, you being the media. And if in turn the media collaborates instead of communicates.
But that charge of collaboration, A, is a very grave allegation. B, it's also a bit of it's a little bit of shooting the messenger in the sense that, yes, the media might, I'm not saying that all sections of the media are above board. I'm certainly not making the charge that there are not biases within the mainstream media. But I am actually saying that the media aside, there is a wide public out there that's also consuming directly. When you go to election rallies, when you go and address, you've not only talked about the perception, you've also made the point that in terms of attracting the youth, the Congress has not been very...
Let me respond to that. When you say when you go to rallies, who has to show the rally? Not I.
But there's still a public attending the rally.
No. What you see in your house is what is televised and shown to you, right? The public may be attending the rally, but that's maybe 1 lakh people, 2 lakh people, if at all it's a big rally. Otherwise, which public are you talking about? Ultimately, it's the person in the house who's watching the TV and who is seeing what's happening. And and the kind of money that they spent on those rallies,
right?
We were not spending that kind of money. Remember Modi? They had his special cameras. They would show crowds which were not even there. you have used technology to do that. So I'm not attacking the messenger. I'm just saying that the nature of technology and the nature of communication had so completely changed and was mastered by them. Right? And that actually worked in their favor. Otherwise, if we were so corrupt, why is it that nobody has been, convicted so far? The 5 years almost have passed. And what happened to 2G? The judge said, I kept waiting from morning to evening to find out what's the evidence of corruption. And he said, nobody, the CBI is in their control. Okay. Where's the evidence? So all this is make-believe. They were able to manage it. And the reality was somewhat different. I mean, take for example, he said that there was a policy paralysis. Remember, that's a charge that was made against the UPA.
Yes.
Yes. Now, in 10 years, the average growth rate of the economy in the GDP was 8.2%. So where was the policy paralysis? That was actually delivered on the ground. And now the UN report says that 270 million people were taken out of poverty during the last 10 years. So obviously the UPA did something right, but we were shown to be inept, inadequate, corrupt, representatives of crony capitalism.
Right.
Right? What's happening in the last 4.5 years? It's much worse. See what the IL&FS debt today is, 90,000 crores.
But sir, so in that sense, what is the learning for the Congress today? Because, even you're right, you might be right in saying that pointing to the GDP figures, pointing to the people coming out of poverty, even take Aadhaar, take the entire conversations around Aadhaar. This government took a pre-existing scheme and ran with it to the point where it became so controversial, it ended up in the courts for concerns over invasions of privacy. But why did the Congress, why was it that the Congress was not able to control the message even on something like Aadhaar?
No, we did. I was one of the counsel in the Supreme Court. We were talking about it every day. We tried to talk about Notbandi, for example, demonetization. I think that message has gone across, that it's perhaps one of the biggest scams in the country. Talking about GST, I think that message has gone across. And remember what Modi said during his election campaign, that what the Congress was not able to do in 60 years, I'll do in 60 months.
Right.
And he's absolutely right. In 60 years, we didn't bring the price of petrol to 90 rupees a litre. He was able to manage it in 60 months, right? We didn't bring the price of dal and other commodities to 150 rupees a kilo. He managed it in 60 months. And don't forget that today, people are silent. If you go across the country, the message is there. People realize what these guys have been up to, right? So I don't agree with you. On Aadhaar, what was our Aadhaar? It was to service the public distribution system. That is why we brought in Aadhaar.
Right.
And it was not made mandatory. We had given choices to people, alternatives to people, even while delivering on the public distribution system. What did they do? They tried to bring in the private sector. They tried to get information. The government itself, it became not an Aadhaar Act, but a Sarkari Adhikar Act, a corporate sector Adhikar Act, not an Aadhaar Act, because they wanted to give this data to the private sector to intrude into our lives. We argued against it, and we've succeeded. In fact, what has been cleared today by the court is the Aadhaar Act, the public distribution system, without the option to an individual to provide for alternative forms of identity. So we've succeeded there. And I think people know about it.
Although it's mandatory, in one way or the other, it's
mandatory. That's right. I think a lot is to be said about the Aadhaar in times to come, because this is just the beginning. There are lots of creases there that will have to be ironed out. Let's see what the government does about it. But I think the government is getting a lot of flack, and there's a general feeling of discontent. Because remember, when a person who owns a scooter goes to a petrol station, buys petrol and has to pay 90 rupees, I don't have to send him any message. He knows what this government has done to him. And he knows that the government is pocketing the money that should be in his pocket.
So one of the concerns, as this discontent kind of spreads, we're getting closer and closer to the next general election, is that we've been talking about polarization and communal violence or just in general anger and violence in around the country, something that people have said the Prime Minister has not spoken nearly enough about. You made the point a short while ago about social media, and you talked about now they're talking about fake news and hate speech and things like that. Yet when you were minister as well, these were concerns you had flagged and you had raised.
I got a lot of flack for it.
Yes.
Remember, I said, and I mentioned it to some of the social media platforms who came to me.
You write about that as well.
Yeah, I write about it. There were images that I saw there that concerned me. So I asked them, how will we deal with it at a future point in time? Is there any way to deal with it? That's all I asked. Do you have any solutions for it? Because I knew that it will result in communal violence. These will become platforms through which violence will be encouraged. And that's exactly what's happening today. At that time, the New York Times wrote a front page piece that I'm anti-free speech, right? But I could realize as to what these platforms can do if they are in the hands of these people, right? And I've been proved to be right today. And that very New York Times is now talking about curbs. Right? They are eating their words at this point in time. And the whole world is talking about curbs. Even in the UK.
But it's a dangerous line.
It is dangerous, but the fact of the matter is that every technology can be a great tool for empowerment, but it can also disempower millions of people. And what this government doesn't realize is that these armies of people that they kept are now becoming tools for disempowerment. People have committed suicides, right? So we need to ensure, I mean, we shouldn't have curbs on the media, but you have to have systems in place. What those systems are, we all need to get together and put in place.
Social media is an entirely different animal.
Let's be clear, there are dangers there too, and we are seeing how fake news is being used, how communal riots take place, and you see what happened to people in the Northeast. From Bangalore, they had to rush, remember?
Right. Yeah.
And you see what happened to images, violent images being shown, which have nothing to do with incidents in India. Incidents out of the country are being shown as if they have happened in India.
Yes.
And that's generated communal violence and people have been killed. Now, you
Absolutely, it's a grave
is
concern.
that freedom? Is that freedom?
It's a grave concern.
Is it freedom of speech?
No, I think
if
there
it
are
is
problems.
Not, then how do you deal with it? It's time. We should deal with it. I don't think that we should just say that, but at the same time we should make sure that free speech is not interfered.
Is there a space for politicians to enter into to decide what regulations should exist around these spaces?
No, it's no space for politicians. But supposing in a given point in time you find out that somebody has perpetrated violence and with a motive, right, or wants to sow the seeds of violence and has done it. Now we should have the right to know who that person is.
Right. Okay.
That's all.
So, Mr.
That under the cloak of anonymity, you can't get away with violence.
Right.
When girls
And
commit suicide,
concern.
and trolled and killed.
Sure, an extremely legitimate concern. So, in the run-up between now and we're assuming sometime in March, April, May next year, we'll have elections and another government, either by the same people or by the opposition, we don't know. But what are your main concerns in the run-up to the 2019 polls? What are the main issues the Congress will be looking at in terms of ensuring and mobilizing its vote base or attracting new voters? I think new voters and the youth is a huge issue. And just as an aside to this, last year in December, you had gone to the Supreme Court about the Ayodhya petitions as well, and you had said that there should be no hearings on this before 2019.
No. Again, you see, remember.
Yeah.
There is a context to that.
Right.
And the context is that one Subramaniam Swamy, who had nothing to do with the matter, without referring to those who are parties to the proceedings, goes to court.
Right.
And the then Chief Justice fixes the matter.
Right. So my question is
So,
that now that they've decided on a hearing, are you concerned as far as the election campaigns are concerned?
I have been out of this litigation since December, right, for two reasons. Number one, I have not been available
Okay.
as a lawyer, and 2 after the impeachment motion, I made a public statement that I will not enter court number 1 till October 2.
I remember that, yes.
Right? And I have not entered court number 1. And in the meantime, 15 hearings have taken place. So I have nothing to do with it, right? Nothing stopped the Chief Justice of India or the court to hear the matter. So please don't put the blame on me.
No, not the blame.
Right?
I'm asking your concerns.
I only mentioned that suddenly this matter is taken up out of the blue at the instance of a person who is not a party to the proceedings. Why should that happen? It doesn't happen in other cases. So it is my concern. And if Ayodhya had to be heard, could have been heard in 2014. Right? Why at the end or the beginning of 2018? I only expressed that concern that the matter should be heard. But through this, the nation should not be communalized. Right?
So now, given that it's happening, it was going to happen 29th October onwards.
You see, court cases should not be used, right, as fodder for violence. That's the key. Right? That's the bottom line. Right? Now, it is the wisdom of the judiciary for them to decide when they should hear the matter, when they should not hear the matter. It's not for us to decide. Right? After all, the judiciary also wants to maintain the social and the fabric of this country to ensure a secular fabric.
In fact, of late, people are arguing the judiciary is doing the job of many parliamentarians as well. That's a different conversation.
That's a different conversation. Yeah. But I'm saying that the ball is in the court today.
Yeah.
And the court has to decide in the context of what the court has seen in the last 4.5 years, what it wishes to do. We have nothing to do with it.
So I think coming back to the original question, which is that in the run-up to the elections, what would be the key concerns of the Congress party, and what would not strategies, I don't know, but how would you tackle them?
We are seeing what happened in the UP election, the kind of communal venom, right, that spread. We're seeing the kind of statements that their ministers are making and the president of the BJP is making, right? Fake news, whether it's fake news or genuine, is good enough. You control the line of language they are using. And in the context of ghar vapsi, cow vigilantism, lynching, love jihad, just the other day,
Police, right?
UP police, see what they did. We fear that this is going to be the nature of discourse, and it'll get worse from day to day till 2019. I think we need to, and I think all of us must play a positive role. I mean, if democracy is to survive, it should survive. It will not survive if this is given, if this is encouraged and allowed to sort of run amok.
So, just as a follow-up to this, when we've heard Mrs. Sonia Gandhi talk about the Congress not being only a Muslim party. We've seen Rahul Gandhi go on his Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. We're looking at the Madhya Pradesh Congress campaign, looking at setting up gaushalas and carrying out Rath Yatras. What should the public make of this? Because on the one hand, there is a concern about communalism and Hindutva politics. On the other hand, there is a charge of soft Hindutva being made against
What is the soft Hindutva? I've been to the temple several times, right, myself, right? So if I go to the temple, it's soft Hindutva because I'm a congressman. So therefore
I don't think it's that simple.
It is. Why? Merely because he's now the president of the party. I mean, in my family, we went to Mansarovar, right? That didn't make national news because I'm not the president of the party. Right?
Yeah.
You would have said it is soft Hindutva if I were anywhere in the party, right? Now that
maybe not.
Why? Why do you say maybe not? You would have said because the Congress is doing soft. What do you mean? If I go to the temple, I'm a Hindu. I'm entitled to go to the temple. I don't do temple politics. The difference is that.
So that's
soft
my
Hindutva
question.
If you do temple politics. Nobody's doing any temple politics here. If I go to the temple, you say it is soft Hindutva. So that's the charge. It's not soft Hindutva. A Hindu is entitled to go to the temple, right? But a Hindu should not, in public discourse, use the temple as a place for politics, and use it as a strategy to polarize voters.
And as you all plan your election strategies, what are the learnings about the way the Congress functions as a party going into another really difficult campaign?
I think that you should also realize that at the height of Modi's popularity, he got 31% of the vote.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So 69% of the people of this country
did not vote for the BJP.
To 2014 did not vote. So what was the failure of the Congress party? We should have tied up with the opposition then. Right?
So stitch up better alliances?
That's right. If we are together, he would have lost even then. Now, we've decided to stitch up alliances, state-specific alliances. That's what I've said in the book also. And we need to move forward in that direction, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. There is no way Modi can win if the opposition unites.
And you're very clear that that is really the way to go with the Congress and
along with the positive
agenda,
on what we want to do for children in terms of education, skill development, healthcare, women, bringing women into the workforce and empowering them, agriculture in particular, dealing with productivity. The answer is not MSP. Answer is increasing levels of production per acre, right? And using science and technology to move forward, building up a scientific temper and investing in science, because science will give you the solutions for tomorrow.
You spent a large part of the book talking about that as well. So just in terms of health and some of the other, we just saw the launch of Ayushman Bharat scheme.
See, the problem with these kind of schemes is that there is no implementation on the ground. See, what we need to do is to strengthen the primary health centers, right?
So you're saying that you can make the announcement, but the implementation is key. Ultimately, that's what you're going to be focusing on?
We've seen it in all the schemes that we have launched, which he renamed and tried to suggest to the people of this country there are his schemes. But there's nothing happening on the ground, whether it's Mudra, it's any other scheme, or the giving a gas cylinder. Even Swachh Bharat, though he talks about it, please go to Varanasi and find out how many toilets have been built. I think you people should do some research on that and realize what has really happened on the ground. Many places don't have water. What's the use of building a toilet if you're not able to supply water, right? And in many cases, people have made money. In many cases, the implementation has not been done, though the data suggests that it has been done. So these are all very, very, very serious issues which we need to talk about. Point is, Achhe Din should become Sache Din.
Okay. All right, Mr. Sibal, thanks very much for giving the Wire some of your time. That's an interesting note to end this interview on, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the run-up to 2019. So thanks very much for joining us. Thanks.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.